I'm Mike Doffany, and I work with senior leaders and their teams on the human side of execution. I'm listening to companies talk about their AI investments lately, and I'm watching the same mistake happen on repeat. The mistake they're making is they're treating AI rollouts as a technology problem when it's actually a leadership communication problem. By the end of this video, you'll know what's actually changed about how employees are reading leadership decisions and leadership communications. But I also want to give you 4 moves that you need to make now before the AI rollout actually gets live. First thing I want you to understand, the gap used to be invisible. It's not anymore. 20 years ago, I used to work at Hewlett Packard. I would get a quarterly memo. We would wait for the announcement from the company. Carly Fiorina was the CEO of HP at the time, and you'd wait for her to announce something. And usually it was stock price, it was buybacks, bonuses. There'd be the unexpected, there's a corporate meeting coming, and you kind of wonder what that meant for us. That was during the Compaq merger, so it was usually about the layoffs, or it was about the merger acquisition fight that was going on. The quarterly memo thing is gone, right? You're not surprised. Today, though, your employees, they read every Slack reaction. They read communication from different Slack groups. They read every face at the all hands meetings. They read every promotion decision, every leadership departure. The information around the environment, around leadership, has fundamentally changed. It used to be they would listen to the words of the leader and then figure out what it meant to them, okay? Now, they listen to the words of the leader to give it a comparison check to what they actually feel on the ground. The gap is what they're listening for, not the message. See, the old communication style was town halls, memos, internal comms, assumed employees would pay attention when you wanted them to. See, we thought that most employees were focused on doing their jobs and then waiting for the occasional message on high. That was the old model. And by the way, that model only worked if you actually had organized internal comms, if you actually had management that understood the responsibility for cascading communication. You had dependable methods where the channels would reach everyone and every team the same. I see that most companies now don't even have internal communication systems that map the old days. They don't have anything that matches a true communication cadence. The world of that old cadence is gone. Now it's like basically 24-hour news, right? They said the internet and news channels brought us round the clock news. Well, so did Slack. So did Always On. So did all of our team and all of our communication platforms and feedbacks and surveys. Today, it's real-time leadership. It's a tiny dozen signals. They are not reading the memo for the memo. They're reading the memo to see how much it reflects their current reality. For example, one of the things people will announce is that, hey, we're going to roll out AI because it's going to take us into new products and new areas, or it's going to allow us to be freed up to do more work. All it takes at the company meetings now is that you can stand up there and talk about restructuring or innovation or new investments and talk about how it's going to do 2 things, how it's going to better serve the customer while also letting people focus on the work that matters most to them and they care most about and how those things go together. You'll always hear that connection between the customer impact as well as the staff engagement and employee. But here's the thing. Employees will instantly then go, so why was this department cut? Why was this thing connected? Now, I'm not making judgment on whether or not those cuts need to be made, but you can't act as if you can make a corporate statement about direction. We're adding in this technology for efficiency to free up the humans to do X. Or we're adding in this to allow our customers to be happier and more engaged here, but then not make other decisions on smaller scale in alignment with them. This is why strategy has to be equally matched. We always say the time you put into strategy has to be equally matched in communication. You need to assume that you actually still need people to follow you and implement these tech and strategic decisions, and they're reading every signal. You have to be more intentional than ever before on your communication. The question isn't whether or not they see the gap between the words you're saying in corporate comms and the actions you're taking. The question is, what do I expect they are taking away from what our actions mean? There's a phrase that I like to use. I used to work in rehab years ago before I got into tech work, back right out of college. And when I worked in addictions, I have addictions counselors say to me, remember, Mike, the only promise anyone can make that you should believe is action. That sums up corporate communication today. If you're rolling out AI in tech and using words like efficiency and optimizing human beings, guess what? The only words that the only promises they actually believe in your comms is the actions you're taking. Are you identifying the areas where these humans who are suddenly more efficient are going to be moving into? Are you identifying the areas that the problems you're solving for your people, and you're so excited to solve that problem, not just actually replace them? See, the next thing you need to catch is that the word efficiency is the wrong word. If you are posturing your tech change with the word efficiency, you're done. Because here's the problem. Efficiency has been weaponized in corporate communication for so long that employees just hear efficiency as a euphemism for cuts. If your AI strategy is built on that word efficiency, your team has already heard the rest of the sentence before you finish. We used to say things like synergy, right sizing, operational excellence, efficiency. These are all code words for your employees to think head count reduction. Employees track this vocabulary for years. Okay, you can go back and hear it going back to the 80s and 90s, for God's sake. Why does this matter? When you say that now, efficiency in the old days might actually be more efficient. That's what it was about. The problem is when you use language like efficiency around tech, AI is the first wave of technology where the employee genuinely does not know whether or not this technology that you just bought and are trying to implement will either assist them or replace them. It was a different thing when you were like, I knew I was going to be replaced by a machine that would come along and do a spot weld on a Grand Cherokee frame at the Grand Cherokee Jefferson North plant in downtown, in the heart of Detroit. I knew that, okay? So when they said, this is a new thing, a new robot to weld the frame is completely different than a high-end piece of tech that would help me better track when the parts got there to the right spot on the assembly line. When it comes to tech, it's one thing to go, this computer is going to help you actually write more efficiently so you don't need a typewriter, versus this computer will write for you. We don't need you to write at all. See, here's what you need to understand. You need to name what you're really doing. I know it's going to be scary. If the goal is to free up time so people can do more work that requires their judgment, say that and then prove it with the next decision you make. If the goal is headcount reduction because you think you have more backup and you actually don't need as much redundancy, you got to be honest about that. Trying to dress this up is the worst of both options. The changes you're making are going to create emotional transition no matter what. You will actually do worse by trying to sell them a fake story. You can't simply say efficiency if you actually don't expect the people around to be more efficient. If you mean replacement, you have to say, we are in a space where we actually have jobs that can be done by people that aren't people, by tech. We are actually in a place where we actually have other roles that if the company grows, we can deploy you into somewhere else, but that role can be replaced by this technology. And our due diligence to the company requires that we replace it. That at least lets them know that their job is a thing that can be replaced, and they have to figure out how to find someplace that needs their judgment or find somewhere else to be. But when you actually sell them something worse, here's the problem. For all those human beings that are left, once you make the cuts, once you do replace them, once you do the RIF, which is a fancy word of saying reduction in force, which is layoffs, guess what? All the research shows that productivity plummets. I think it's like almost 30% following a reduction in headcount. Why? Because people have lost their friends. It's uncertainty. It's change. You're actually going to make this worse by doing a headcount reduction that doesn't match the messaging. If you're going to make a reduction, call it out. Say it. Use the words. Have the courage of your investment. Own it with great honesty and courage. Because at least they have the chance to figure out that, hey, something's coming. I need to be ready for it. But if you're trying to do efficiency cuts, which is I should reduce headcount because I can do the same job with fewer bodies, but also selling we're going to make you more efficient, your employee doesn't know if AI is going to make them more efficient or replace them. And they're counting on you to tell them the truth. The other part of this, more than ever before, is that in the old model, the third thing I need you to catch is this. In the old model of corporate communication, you had the quarterly rhythms, you had the mechanisms, but oftentimes the CEO delivered the most clearly laid out strategy and trust, and it flowed downward. In the new model, it's peer-to-peer first. And so if you don't have managers and peers that are communicating with you, if you don't have a pulse of that, you're in trouble. Because the more you depend on the leader being the only one with messaging, the bigger the issue is going to be. Think of it. We used to trust restaurant critics for everything. A restaurant critic would tell you, look at the newspaper, oh, so-and-so restaurant, Italian eatery is amazing. Go to there. And so you would go out there and you would Go to Italian eatery because the writer in the paper told you that was the voice. They had the voice of taste, and that's a great restaurant. Now, you go and you read the reviews. You read OpenTable or Yelp or Google reviews. Why? Because we trust peer-to-peer more than anything else. If your direct level managers, meaning someone that has a direct report, doesn't actually believe in what you're rolling out, guess what? Your employees won't either. Regardless of how good the all-company meetings go, regardless of how good the media talking points are, regardless of the websites, if your direct report managers don't believe what you're rolling out, your employees won't either. Because when they leave the all-employee meeting, they instantly go, hey, boss, what do you think? If they aren't properly prepped, if they themselves are not properly communicated with, those days are done. See, the shift to frontline and middle managers is now the primary trust filter, okay? They're the ones who are dealing with the tech. They're the ones who are going to be the touch point that employees go to. They're going to be less interested in what the CEO says and more interested in how well their own boss can translate the CEO. If you haven't spent time bringing these managers into this strategy, not just briefing them, but like stress testing them, making them feel like they're a part of it, your rollout is compromised before it begins. The specific failure mode, leadership teams that hand managers a script and say, cascade this down. When managers know they have a script and they weren't involved in the creation of that script, employees can tell. Because again, employees are no longer taking messaging as direction. They're taking their lived experience every day as the direction. They compare the communication you're rolling down to them with their currently lived experience. So you can't simply give your managers a script. You've got to educate them, bring them on board, and let them participate in how they want to message it, how they understand the strategy, how they become believers. They are the channel that everything has to flow through, but you have to treat them that way. You've got to treat them in a way that makes their teams believe that this tech and this rollout and this investment is the best thing for their company, the customers, and the mission. Here's the biggest issue we have. We have a gap between the words we say and the things we do. Employees no longer judge leadership by what you say. They judge it by the gap between the words we say and the actions and decisions we make. Small gap is normal, right? It can be easy for us to go, you know what? Yes, we just made cuts and we just made an investment. There are decisions in there that are about long-term strategy that don't always make sense. Not every employee is going to have visibility to every strategic move that has seemingly disconnected ground level consequences. Large, repeated gaps is what ends our trust in our leadership. See, the leader will announce a people-first model and then make decisions that are almost always about margin. The announcement is not what's remembered. It's they said this, here's what happened. AI rollouts are, we call it vision gap reality. They're gap-rich environments. Every decision, who keeps their job, what gets automated, who gets promoted into the new structure, how transparent the new metrics are, when it's all going to happen. These things, because they're so fluid and the models are changing so much, man, there's so much risk here to widen that gap, to create a communication problem for you. You need to pick 3 or 4 non-negotiable principles for your rollout, whatever the tech may be. This is why we're going here. So it starts with this. You got to pick why exactly are we doing it, and then you got to stress test that. Does the rollout messaging still work? Does it still fit? Is it still hitting these principles? If a decision violates the principles, either change the decision or change the principle. But you've got to tell the people why. Hey, I know we said we wouldn't do this by merging these departments, but we wouldn't make any department changes. But it became clear that these two departments have a responsibility that will overlap once this new technology comes. So I know we said this, we're having to change this. But that means that you've laid out the 4 or 5 principles as the base reasons and strategic reasons that you've communicated of why you're doing this tech rollout. And the last one, here's the deal, the honest version. This is way harder than it sounds. Most leadership teams say people first because that's what the polls want. We know that human being focused organizations create the greatest emotional engagement, which creates the greatest return. The problem is that you can't simply say people first anymore. We actually don't believe that. If they think that you are profit first, if they think that you are power first, if they think that you are influence first, or whatever, fill in the blank there. I could do one more, but I can't think of that right now. Anything other than them, when you say, I care about you, but your actions don't match it, that's actually worse. In fact, John Gottman, who does research on relationships, one of the things he talks about is that we constantly are making bids for connection with human beings and talk about these in small levels of like relationship, but also like ordering a Starbucks or talking at work. And they'll say that in a best case relationship, when I reach for you, like I want to hear what you're saying because you're my leader, and I say, what's going on? And you turn towards me and you're affirming and you care about me and my life, guess what? We have a good relationship. A more difficult relationship is when I say, this is the state of my life and this is what I care about and this is my vision and dreams and how it fits into my job at your company. And your response is one of, well, that's a stupid idea and you're against me. And you're like, you're here to work, not here to grow. I'm being hyperbolic here, obviously. That's obviously more damaging to the relationship. But you know what's worse? Gottman found that worse than having an employee or relationship where the person is actively against you, it's the relationship where the person is apathetic towards you, where you don't seem to take any action or response in connection to them. You're actually kind of like, well, whatever. There's a version of that that's happening right now with corporate communications and these AI rollouts, is that they're saying something, but then people are going, hey, I'm scared. Is the tech coming to help me or replace me? And you don't respond. In fact, you avoid the conversation. That's when they start to believe that you aren't even considering them. And they're going to start to tune you out. And actually, not only will morale decrease, so will productivity, so will implementation. The cost of getting this wrong is actually kind of hidden. See, the AI rollout that fails because of communication won't fail very loudly. It doesn't like explode. It's like, oh my gosh, this tech planning for a year and a half suddenly doesn't work. It will actually fail quietly. And it's going to happen through like quiet quitting, slower than expected adoption. You're going to start to see attrition. You're going to see what I call pocket vetoes. We don't actually say no. We just don't really do it that way. You can't quite trace the big event of like 10 people resigned because the tech came in. And the ROI though is so far out there that it's not quite measured at the same time. But the case of, hey, we can just do this, it's going to get return. That's the bigger challenge, is that the hidden cost of poor communication on this rollout from the leadership is actually going to eat you down the road. But you've got to know ahead of time. See, this is dangerous. The reason why I'm doing this now is because the hard part is it's like an invisible fire in the walls. There's no smoke alarm going off. You never get one clear signal that, oh gosh, our leadership communication on this tech is bad. See, you'll get a story about pockets of, well, change management's hard, or is that, or, we rolled it out, but they don't want to use it as much, or man, they can get on board or get out of the way. Those are things that happen after the rollout. You don't have to wait that long. See, and the problem is you're likely then to actually cost yourself more money because you're going to think the technology is wrong when actually your rollout was wrong. You didn't bother bringing the people on board. The technology worked. Your leadership posture and communication didn't. The team quietly resisted. They didn't surface objections early enough. The gains evaporated into system friction that isn't quite measured. By the time you can see this in the numbers, the truth is it's already gone. You cannot restart a technology rollout. You have to rebuild the trust first, and that takes longer than the rollout did. One of the issues, I was talking to a company that all they do is tech stack investment in companies once a VC makes an investment. So a VC will come along, invest in a company and say, man, I think we can get them to efficiency. We can get them high returns if we give them some new technology. And so they'll come in and kind of lay that out here. The problem is that one, the investors will not ask the question of, well, can the leadership team that we're investing in and giving them this resource for the tech, can they actually do the project plan? Can they do the things we talked about, which is come up with the 5 strategy or core principles to communicate the implementation of this tech? Can they then actually deal with the change management, the mental transition work, the culture and community work that comes after there's a likely reduction in workforce? And so what they'll do is they'll make an investment into that without ever thinking, to my comment, I have a keynote talk I do called Who's Going to Lead the Humans After the Machines Arrive? They're not even thinking about that. I talked to one of the largest VC investors in tech installations into companies. And I said, tell me how much leadership assessment and de-risking they're doing before they're making tech investments. And they're like, well, none, because they think the tech will do it for them. That's like giving a Da Vinci robot operating system to a surgeon without ever knowing if that surgeon can actually operate this world-class piece of operating equipment. The human beings are not going away yet. I bet we got at least a decade. You're still going to need human beings in places. The trick is that you're looking to make installation without asking, are my managers at the lower and mid levels, are they ready for this? Yes, the tech can do this thing, but how much training and investment is going into training the managers? the communication, that lower level, how much they feel listened to, how much are we bringing them on board? The buy-in at the manager level is everything. As a coach, I see this tech challenge way too often, is that leaders will come up with great ideas that will open new markets, create new efficiencies. And I firmly believe that most of the leaders that I get the pleasure to work with do not simply just want to cut headcount. They really do believe that if there's an efficient way of doing things, then they should do it. It would be in the best interest of the company. They want to be successful. They want everyone to feel like they're winning. The hard part right now, a couple of things that's standing out to me, is that there's this drumbeat of, I've got to get there first. The inevitabilism of it all, if that's a word even, that it's all just inevitable. And so if we don't race there now, if we don't cut as fast as we can, if we don't get as efficient as we can, then we're not going to still survive. And so they have this, we're all going to die mentality if we don't get there first approach. There can be something said for that. But the problem is that it's actually still going to involve human beings. It's still going to be there. And so what I see is, one, we drive that way and we use that excuse to go, because here's the thing. If your house is on fire and you're asleep in your bed, you don't care that I come in and yank you out and I'm kind of a jerk and I haul you out to the street because I saved your life. But if I tell you, listen, if you don't replace all your smoke detectors, and I scream and holler at you about your smoke detectors not being right, for months and months and months when there is no fire yet, you're like, Mike, shut up about my smoke detectors. Because I'm obnoxious and rude. I have to be kinder about that. I need to find different ways to get your attention because the fire is not imminent. We'll use the fire example to go, come on, let's just make the cuts now. The problem is that actually they don't know what you know, leaders, and they can't see what you see. And how real is that? Because even if you're right, it still has to be implemented by people. So once you lose that efficiency, right, you do the implementation, but it didn't go well. And like I said, it kind of dissolves. It's easy to start to think, well, we'll just develop more training. Here's the thing I need you to know. There is no post-rollout training that will fix a botched implementation. You need to anchor your leadership on what they're actually doing and what they're trying to create as an impact. Bring the managers into the next phase as authors, not just like paths and channels. And you got to kill the word efficiency. There's three things that I've covered I need you to catch really deeply. One, your employees today are reading leadership in real time. Through every one of your actions, you are never not on stage, and they're never not watching and listening. Two, vocabulary is everything. Efficiency carries baggage. People are listening and they're already decoding and questioning you before you finish the sentence. Three, your managers are everything. They are the trust filter. They have to trust you. The words and you're saying and the decisions you're making have to match. And the cost of getting this wrong is invisible until it isn't. One action I would say you need to take right now. If you are looking to do a tech installation in the midst of it, in the next 24 hours, pull together your senior team responsible for your tech rollout and ask them a single question. What are we actually optimizing for, and what would we trade to mean it? Don't just take the first answer, ask it a couple times. The first answer will be too easy. What are we actually optimizing for, and what will we trade away in order to actually have that happen? This is what courageous leadership looks like. See, this is the part that you actually have to have courage. Most leaders are scared to death to say out loud, I think our future requires fewer employees. I think that we could actually replace a certain number of bodies to be more efficient. And we could then have tech that would help make the current bodies we can have more effective. And that will grow us here. But you got to do the work ahead of time. If it's, hey, all the upside comes in secretly cutting bodies and creating more margin, and you're not saying that, the implementation gap between the vision and the reality is going to cost you unexpected costs. Are you getting it? They're always listening. Don't use words that everybody knows are a lie. 3, let your managers be the litmus test of whether or not the vision of the implementation matches the reality. What are you actually optimizing for? And what are you willing to do? Like, is there a headcount number? Is there a cost? What are you willing to do to make it real? Yeah. Hope your implementation goes well. Lead from the start. Don't simply wait for training. If you want to talk more, drop me a DM. Are you finding this at your company? Are you finding that your leadership, they don't seem to get the gap between the language they're using and the reality? Love to hear from you. Give me a follow. Dropping more content like this every week.